What's happening, ladies and gentlemen of League Zero, and welcome to the countdown for Week 1 of Season 1. I am joined by, not staff this time, but actual members of the community, some of which you guys chose. First off, the very heavily requested plaZma, a former staff member and now a flex support for Newt Newt, if I recall correctly, as well as graphic designer. We have Melon, the star DPS player for Chengdu Chads. Not sure what that noise was, but that's Melon. And we also have a member of the production crew, a caster from the One Trick Wonders Double Cap game that happened recently, Sleepy.
Hello.
So with that, we'll dive straight into the first topic, which is a recap for Week 1, and oh boy, what a week this was. I don't think very many people could have predicted everything that was going to happen. I mean, for example, I predicted that Easy Clap would win, but I still had doubts that it would actually happen, but I'm glad to see it happen nonetheless. Glad to see that team coming together. But let's get into the advanced games in earnest first. So we had Easy Clap beating out Z9 in a 3-1, Chengdu Chads beating out Newt Newt in a very close 3-1, and we had Crest beating out Hangzhou Bark in a 3-1. Does anyone have any hot takes for these games in particular?
Well, I don't know if everyone knows this, but like half of Z9's players were playing on like laptops and stuff. They got kind of screwed over this week, and I've been told that they don't plan on losing another game. We'll get into that later.
That's the kind of promise I like to hear. I have heard a little bit about that in general chat. I believe they had like 3 players on 150 ping, 2 of them on like laptops on the floor.
Yeah, I think one of them was playing off of their neighbor's Wi-Fi.
Yeah, Yusuf, I believe it was either his neighbor's Wi-Fi or his own
hotspot.
His phone's hotspot. So it'll be very interesting to see if they can recover. I have no doubts that if they put their minds to it, they can.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of...
It's kind of interesting to see Z9 still taking a map, though, even with all of that.
Oh, definitely. I will say that map was Control, and Control generally lends itself to the more mechanically gifted team taking.
Mm-hmm.
And you could definitely see the mechanics were on a completely different level than Easy Clap. Hi, Red X. And bye. This is available to all staff, so not shocked that he popped in just to see what was going on. What was I going to say? Right. My hot take for the week, aside from the Easy Clap Z9 one that plaZma already pointed out, was that I was somewhat shocked at how Crest somewhat struggled with Hangzhou Bark. They didn't really stomp them as hard as I was expecting them to. I originally placed them at number 1, but after seeing Bark actually make them work for it quite a bit, Bark definitely proved themselves to be better, but I'm also curious to see in this upcoming week if Crest really isn't living up to the expectations everyone had for them, or if Bark really was that good.
Yeah, and I can speak a little bit about that. I know some stuff internally and also just from watching the VOD. I can tell you right now, Agreed exceeded all expectations, for starters. And Moby's break got a lot of criticism.
I've only seen clips of the VOD, so I haven't been able to check it out entirely.
Another thing is, if Ecology was able to play every map, then I think it would have been a lot closer.
Yeah, even closer. They won their map with Ecology and their flex support, but then he had to leave. I'm not quite sure why.
Yes, I did hear about that.
They were A, kind of tilted with their other flex support, and B, their flex support wasn't performing as well or synergizing as well as Ecology had been, so...
That might explain why, in one of the clips I saw, I believe Hedwig was playing Zenyatta. So maybe there's some internal issues there that I have heard Clovix talk about dealing with some roster issues, so possibly that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, I can talk about another player when we get into it, but let's keep moving for now.
And then I don't think there's too much to talk about for Chengdu Chads versus Newt Newt. It was a really solid game. I had predicted it to go to map 5, much closer than the scoreline would initially say.
I actually think there's a lot to talk about with that game.
Really?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Chengdu has been again, like, this may be a little bit inflated by like my team biases. I'd like to think it's not, because I'm pretty chill with guys on both sides of this game. Chengdu has been prepping. Basically, they've been scrimming non-stop daily for several weeks now, and Newt, who I only found this out once I joined the team. It's obviously been kept somewhat under wraps. They've had 4 scrims ever, and I believe only one of which, or none of them, had their actual starting 6.
Oh, really? That brings me flashbacks of Season 0 plaChat.
Right, and just it almost makes you wonder, like, that first map, you could call it a fluke considering, you know, how much of a stomp some of the other maps were, but I'd honestly say that, like, Newt has it, like, mechanics-wise. They're certainly not behind in any means, and if they can, you know, start grinding, get their starting 6 showing up, and actually getting the synergy going, because you started to see as the match went on, like, between Melon putting the team on his back and Chad's having just twice as much synergy, that was, you know, kind of a big deciding factor.
Yeah, and I have heard Genie talk about them going into that match with basically no warm-up, which makes sense to me in hindsight. They definitely looked cold at the beginning and started to warm up as time went on.
I actually, yeah, I heard similar things. They weren't a warm-up scrim from what I know with the Easy Clap, but basically what happened was, I may get that team wrong, but basically they were kind of like not in the like warm-up scrim mentally yet. They weren't fully focused, and I guess map 1 kind of jolted them back into the game.
Can you confirm or deny, Melon?
Well, we did have a warm-up scrim, but we only had time for, I think, 1 or 2 maps, and yeah, we weren't mentally focused yet.
I think that definitely showed.
I can say that everyone expected us to be like tilted because of the past, but we did a really good job of not getting tilted.
Oh, definitely. I think that showed immediately on Hanamura when Newt had a pretty fast capture, and then you guys came right back and ended up making the map way more competitive than everyone expected after that first round.
Totally.
Let's get into the novice division, because I think this entire division was a giant question mark for basically everyone besides maybe some of the people playing for novice. And this first weekend really opened a lot of eyes as to how good these players are, what sort of strategies they're going to run, as well as where everyone sort of stands. We had Rio Redemption beating Botburgers in a 4-0 victory, One Trick Wonders having an amazing reverse sweep against Double Cap. We'll get to that and its own little segments later on. And then plaChat falling to Pepega Friends 0-3. There was one draw there. So I know we have an entire segment discussing One Trick Wonders comeback, but are there any other hot takes in that regard?
I don't know how hot you could call this, but I honestly don't know if Rio should feel accomplished 4-0ing Botburgers. It's kind of like, you know, look at us, we 4-0'd Houston. Like, obviously, you can only say so much after 1 week, but they did not look comfortable playing. So, just initial reaction. We'll see what changes.
I think they have Rio that has definitely had some star potential. I would like to see them go up against a stronger opponent, which I believe they're facing Double Cap or possibly Pepega Friends this upcoming week. Or actually, let me scroll down. I have that written down.
Yeah, Pepega Friends.
Yeah, Pepega Friends. So I think that's going to be the real test, because Pepega Friends did fight a closer match, if you will. I was also very interested to see Botburgers running a lot of Chengdu Hunters-esque compositions. Supposedly that's because they didn't have their only off-tank Octo there. He was gone for the entire first week, so I don't know if that actually played into it at all. But they definitely came out with a lot more wonky strategies than I think anyone was expecting. And they did quite well on DPS comps. I think they made it a lot more competitive. Go ahead.
I'm really interested to see how the meta takes shape in Novice, because I think one of two things is going to happen. Everyone's just going to stick to Owl and only run goats with the occasional, like, triple DPS or bunker. here and there, maybe a cyber dive to try to counter some other comps, but I honestly think that in the novice division, if teams experiment, they're going to find strategies that, there's the whole thing, like, dress for the job you want, and that's totally true, like, in practice and when you're trying to improve, but I feel like when you're actually in competition, you should just be dressing for the job you have. It's kind of like, you play CSGO, you're silver, like, you should be using the P90, you should be abusing it, if any of you CS players get what I'm saying here. I think the novice division is going to be able to abuse their lesser ability to play goats, you could say. Their goats look totally fine. I think goats will just be easier to counter at that level, and I'm curious to see if any teams actually try to pull it off.
Definitely a wider variety of compositions and strategies in novice that are at the very least viable because the players are less able to punish the potentially suboptimal compositions. I think Botburger's somewhat success is a good example of that.
I have like one thing to say. So I believe that Cybersnip is coaching Rio, right?
Right.
On and off, from what I understand.
I think that's gonna be huge for them.
Yes, if he continues to coach them, and exclusively them, then yeah, definitely. I believe he said something about no team I'm coaching isn't going to not play goats, so it makes a lot of sense.
Which may actually be a bad thing.
Yeah, depending on how the meta shapes up.
Yeah, I don't know if forcing goats in what's plat and below is even going to be the most effective strategy. I mean,
for now they're good at it.
It's not ranked, but exactly. At least for the short term, it's going to be quite effective.
Something I was very shocked about, and maybe this is just my Season 0 bias, in fact I'm almost certain it is how little of a fight plaChat put up against Papega Friends. I believe they had some issues figuring out who was going to play where. Like, I know they had some in-depth plans, but I don't know if they had actually scrimmed enough with those plans as much as just theory crafting. So I wonder how much preparation they really had put into that, as well as I believe some of their intended starters were not available this past weekend.
Yeah, to me it just seems like plaChat needs a lot of practice together.
Yeah.
I wanna see Tanic win. I'm gonna be honest.
He was very much a bright side from what I believe I watched, like 2 different maps. His Zarya was definitely one of the better novice Zaryas out there, and I'm sure he's going to be thrilled to hear that.
I saw the boy he got on Widow, that was nuts.
Yep, he's always been very good at Widow. That's one of his few heroes that he really
and
shines
Reaper
on.
and Tracer, for any of you guys who were there during the Pugs way back.
I mean, Tanic B #1 novice player? Question mark?
It's not impossible.
Maybe. He's definitely up there.
Possible, indeed.
The one issue I remember of him from last season being on plaChat was his hero pool was very niche. Like, he was good at Widow and he was good at, like, Genji and Junkrat, but then he was also good at, like, random miscellaneous heroes that you'd never really see play aside from one-off strats, like Reaper, like Mei. So you'd see, and like the occasional tanks and healers, and it was just a big mess of scattered heroes here and there, and nothing necessarily that you consider like, oh, he's a hit scan player, he's a projectile player. So it'll be very interesting to see how he fits into the roster if Goats becomes less prevalent and he can't stick onto that signature Zarya. Anyone else have anything for Novice Division, or do we want to move on to the potentially the most exciting part of this? Alright, so we can move on to the players of the matches, or player of the match, singular. So we have 6 players from the 6 winning teams. There are also standouts on the losing teams, but I think, I believe I said this to someone in suggestions, might have been Hedwig, where he suggested having 12 player of the matches, or player of the teams, he suggested, but I think the losing team should focus more on what they need to improve on, rather than highlighting who did the best, because it obviously wasn't working. And this came from community vote, actually. I sent out a poll the other day, yesterday as of recording this, and a lot of these polls were very, very close. The 3 of you, my co-hosts, if you will, on this will notice that's for Crest and Papega Friends in particular. There's a HM honorable mention, and it just says the entire team because the voting was that close. But then there were definitely some standouts on the other 4 teams. Easy Clap in particular, Jason DL, their main tank, was by far the top voted person, and I can definitely see why he tends to play Reinhardt as if he's playing Wrecking Ball, and it's quite a spectacle. If you haven't seen it yet, I'd recommend going back and watching the Easy Clap versus Z9 VOD.
I'm probably going to use that. So does. Wrecking Ball doesn't have a shield. I'm not sure Jason does either.
He just kind of barrels forward and knocks everything back in his path, for better or for worse.
You know how like Lucio players find like scroll wheel to jump? That's like Jason with shift.
Pretty much. Honorable mention going to Flare. He had quite a few Graviton eats, and he had a lot of assassinations on Z9's support line. We'll have to wait and see this upcoming week when Easy Clap versus Chengdu Chad's definitely going to be a harder opponent if he can continue that success, or if that was just Z9's inability, technologically speaking, to peel for their supports. Chengdu Chad's, this one is kind of obvious if you watch the match. It was probably my personal favorite match. I'm not just saying that because I casted it, it was also the closest, in my opinion. Melon, who we actually have here. Honorable mentions go out to Zera, the other DPS player, and Ducky, the off-tank player. They both have incredible moments, but Melon very much carried, not in the hard sense, but had some incredible moments consistently in the last three maps. For
I mean, I would give player of the match to Bubbles.
I was like, wait, did Bubbles play? No, he didn't. Bubbles is another off-tank player. Where was Bubbles? Was he just like unavailable? I don't remember him in the lobby.
Bubbles is benched.
Is he? Well, Ducky did a pretty darn good job, if I do say so, from a third-person perspective.
Melon actually just he like literally like. See, here's the craziest part. Like you wouldn't just say he like picked up the team and put the team on his back. Like he used one hand to pick up the team and put the team on his back, and the other hand to hold his freaking Zarya gun and just build a graph every 10 seconds.
Yep. Oh, there was. Oh shoot, I forget which map it was, but it might have been King's Row where Lux ate Melon's grav, and then like by the end of that fight, actually no, it was Hanamura. And by the end of that fight, he had like 65% to the next grav, and I remember pointing it out in the cast thinking, what the hell is this kid on?
Yeah, Melon was kind of, I'll be honest, Melon was destroying what it was.
I remember that. I tried to grab the wall, but he ended up eating it, so I was like, okay, I'll just build him up.
Very much League Zero's version of Sinatra, if I do say so myself. And then you had the absolutely crucial kill onto Basilisk when he was pulling the his sound barrier on Gibraltar, right as they were about to capture. I think that was the defining moment of that victory for you guys on that map.
I give all that credit to Ducky because when he was on Hammond and he knocked him into the air, so I could.
So you could track him easier.
Mhm.
That makes sense, yes. I do remember that in the VOD as well. I believe I was spectating you for that exact moment as well. And I believe the stream might have been as well, although the play of the game for that map was also broadcast, and that'll be showing when I edit all the stuff in. And then we have Zera on the Pharah, on Lijiang Tower, especially on Gardens, I believe it was.
Yeah, his Pharah was amazing on Garden.
He had like, I believe a triple or a quadruple barrage kill on top of just non-stop harassing Basilisk on the Mercy. And then Ducky, as we already said, ate a bunch of grabs. He did really, really well for a stall pick on Hammond. He just stayed on it and really carried in some regards. And then Crest Shadow Dragon is the voted player of the match. This one was very difficult to decide in terms of voting. It came down to, I believe, two votes. The next closest, I believe, was Buffalo, or it looks like Buffalo. It's like an anagram of Buffalo. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it, or if it's like Buffo Lafo is how it's actually spelled. But then the entirety of Crest was like within one vote of Buffalo as well. So it was very close, and I think that speaks to how well they work together as a team. Moving over to Pepega Friends, it was very much the same case. Schaffler, the flex support, the Zenyatta, for the most part. Now, I actually tuned in for one of the early rounds of Lijiang Tower, I believe, for the Pepega Friends versus plaZma, and I remember Schaffler not having the best of times. He was dying a lot. He was dying a lot with Trance, and I believe they lost the few rounds that or the round, because I believe they did win that. That I was watching, they lost that round. So I was thinking, oh wow, he's not having a good time. And to see a lot of people after the match saying he had gotten a lot of picks and he was actually doing much better. So that's good to see. I think that speaks a lot to what Dividing was saying about that team, where they have a very strong coaching staff to be able to prevent that tilt from setting in.
Absolutely.
And Rio Redemption. This one was also very close between Epps and Stewie1K. Epps is the DPS player. He flexed onto a lot of different things, so I can't say for certain if he's primarily hit scan or projectile, but I believe I saw him pop off the most on the Pharah. Although he did have one barrage where I believe you even clipped it, plaZma, where he barraged the corner.
I tuned into the stream for about 5 minutes, watched that happen, and I clipped it, and then was like, I gotta check on the other games. Yeah, it was perfect timing.
I believe that might have made it onto Fresh Nuts, or it's like going to make it onto Fresh Nuts. I'm not entirely sure, but I wouldn't be shocked to see that clip get onto some highlights reel, because it's actually pretty priceless, despite the fact that Epps performed really, really well. And then the honorable mention, of course, goes to Stewie1K. He's the Diva player. One of the Diva players, I believe TNT also filled in. And he had multiple 3K bombs, especially on Busan, the first map. And that was quite impressive. I think a lot of players on Rio really popped off TNT, as I mentioned before. He's also very good. Stanley, or Bob Ross in-game, he played Doomfist primarily, and he actually did quite well, although he only played for one map after it was already a 3-0, so hard to really judge that. And then finally, and this will be a nice little transition into the guest segment with Sleepy here, the One Trick Wonders MVP, can't really deny this, is Silver Star, with an honorable mention going to Shifting. Both of those are One Trick Wonders DPS. I believe there was one other DPS that was subbed in instead of Silver Star for the first two maps. But I was honestly so fascinated by first off, how good Silver Star was on Ashe. And also
he was ridiculous.
How little Double Cap did to really stop him. It wasn't just him, mind you, but he was putting on a lot of pressure, and no one contested him, ever, really, from Double Cap, from what I saw. They just kind of let it happen.
Yeah, for sure.
And unless anyone has anything else to say about any of the players of the match that we talked about, we can move over to the...
Actually, I want to say something for the Crest play of the match.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Bark lost, but I want to say YOLO God was insane on the deep.
Oh, definitely. I definitely noticed him in Hedwig, although Hedwig might just be my personal bias, really performed very well. I think if they want to improve, they can work off of that core and sort of work around that.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on whatever their sweeping roster changes are going to be, as hinted at by Glovix. But going into the guest segment now, because this was quite the spectacle to behold. I watched, I believe, the last 2 or 3 maps of this game, and Sleepy even casted this match, so he saw a lot of first-hand insanity, if you will, where One Trick Wonders came back from 0-2 and came back and won the entire series. The first reverse sweep of the season, not the first reverse sweep in League Zero history. That was, unfortunately, plaZma versus Z9 during the semifinals last season. But going to this. So, I do have some questions for you, Sleepy, because you obviously had one of the best perspectives on this entire match.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think Double Cap was doing so right that they pretty heartily took the first 2 maps off of One Trick Wonders?
So I think what they were doing right in the first 2 maps was particularly in their ult economy. In the first 2 rounds, they were pulling off some incredible plays with how they were managing their ultimates. They got through a lot of fights using only 1 or 2 ultimates, leaving them 4 for the next fight. And in GOATs, you really want to be able to have those ultimates ready and kind of barrel roll with those ultimates. And a lot of that was coming from the D.Va players. They managed to hold a lot of support ultimates by using Bomb to kind of zone out the one-trick wonders and actually being able to follow up on their Graviton Surges or their Shatters, which there were a lot of, by the way. There were a lot of big Shatters in that game. But yeah, it was a lot of really good ult usage and ult economy from the side of Double Cap. There was one play in particular where they got knocked down by I think 5 of them got knocked down by a shatter from Arrow, and I believe it was Kizco or McCree. No, it was McCree. Placed the bomb, and the bomb forced the entirety of One Trick Wonders to just stand back and not be able to do anything while all of Double Cap was just laying on the ground. It was really impressive what they were doing with D.Va Bomb to be able to hold a bunch of ults.
And to sort of follow that up, because as we know, Double Cap failed to take yet another map after those first 2, is what were the big changes going into the 3rd map? Because One Trick Wonders, obviously something switched right there.
Well, the first thing and the easiest thing to say is Silver Star. He wasn't in the first 2 maps. He came in the 3rd and completely took over. His, I don't know if this was on the coaching staff or just One Trick Wonders being kind of desperate to try something different, but they put in Silver Star, who they knew wasn't really that good at Zarya and knew they couldn't really run a GOATS competition. And so they took that risk and made a really strong comp of both Ashe and Pharmacy that really countered Double Cap GOATS, which they seemed really reluctant to swap off of for the first 2 maps. And I mean, why would they? They were doing it so well. But once it started to fall apart, Double Cap really didn't show a major change in playstyle, didn't really adapt to the Ashe Pharmacy that One Trick Wonders was doing. And just kind of turning that on for them was, or being able to bring that out was huge. Swinging the game in their favor.
And I think the one question that I know for a fact Double Cap is asking themselves, and I'm sure they've already figured out some answers to it, but what do you think would have been like the easiest way for Double Cap to prevent this this shift in momentum that ultimately led to their reverse sweep?
I think what happened is they may have just been complacent with their first 2 maps. They thought, well, we took the first 2 pretty heavy-handedly. Maybe just like subconsciously they let it get to them that maybe they thought they were just more deserving of the win. And so because of that, they seem to be way less aggressive than they were in the first 2 maps. And so even when they swapped off of GOATS to a quad DPS comp that's very strong against the Ashe Pharmacy, they didn't really show much aggression and just kind of went into a poke war against an Ashe and Pharah, and you can't ever really win that. Not with how much damage both of them do combined and how easy their ults are to charge if you're just standing there poking. Both Bob and Barrage are huge at wiping the enemy team. So yeah, just being more aggressive and keeping with their momentum. They kind of let that slip away as the match went on.
And I do have one more question for you as to what you witnessed. You said Double Cap was very reluctant originally to swap off of the GOATS. Did you, from what you saw when they did finally swap off onto a quad DPS and potentially some other compositions, do you think that GOATS was potentially the only thing that they were practicing, or that just happened to be the thing that they got stuck in their heads as the one thing they wanted to run?
I think they're a team that wants to be a GOATS team. I don't think it's the only comp that they've practiced, but I think it's their go-to comp that if everything's going in their favor and the other team can't seem to counter it, they really want to be a GOATS team and just kind of let all the other comps kind of fall to the wayside as GOATS is just their main comp.
Yeah, I'd love to actually just tag in real quick. That's kind of what I alluded to earlier. Their GOATS was being countered by the the Ash Farah and that kind of thing. And again, that's like the whole. We're not even at like a high enough tier to where Goats. You could even say is like the most optimal comp even in the advanced division. I'd say not every team would be best at Goats. I know last season a Goats counter that Go Again actually experimented a lot with was the Ash Farah, which we started messing around with towards the end of the season. And because even at that like Masters level, like it is you kind of need to get the whole like goats idea out of your head, because if you innovate just a little bit, all of a sudden you can totally run away with things.
Yeah, for sure. One comp I'd love to see come out, especially in the novice division, is a lot of bunker comps. I didn't notice very many bunker comps, at least not in the game I casted, in the One Trick Wonders game. And I think it's a really strong comp, at least defensively, to be able to counter a Goats comp.
I believe Botburgers pulled it out on Hanamura, although from the looks of it, they might have been trying to emulate what they saw with Newt because it works so well with them versus Chengdu. The execution was obviously less stellar for Botburgers, but then again, that could just be the divisional differences. So, hard to say.
It could very well just be a comp that they just pulled out and practiced in 1 day's time after seeing it from that game too, so maybe they just need more practice on it. As they work it into the rotation.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for that insight, and I think with that we can move on to the final little bit, which won't take quite as long, I promise, which will be the match predictions for Week 2. So for Week 2 we have Z9 versus Hangzhou Bark. I think a lot of people are agreeing that this will be quite a telling match for both teams. Then we have Easy Clap for Chengdu Chads. We have Crest versus Newt, and then for the Novice Division we have Double Cap versus Botburgers, Papega Friends versus Rio Redemption, and Platchat versus One Trick Wonders. Now, for the most part, all four of us, or three of the four of us, have voted that Z9 will defeat Hangzhou Bark, but plaZma, at the last second, decided to switch his choice to Hangzhou, and I am very curious to hear his reasoning as to why.
Yeah, so... Alright.
I believe you cut out there.
Both of these teams, I'm not going to go into specific. Both the teams are kind of a mess right now. And just from what I've heard, Hangzhou seems like a little bit less of a mess. They seem to at least know what they want to do, which I can't really say if that's as true for Z9. What I will say is that if Acid can get his rig down in time for this match, I think Hangzhou will be lucky to take a map. However, if some other things I've heard about Z9 are true, it's totally possible that Hangzhou, has their main...
I believe you cut out there for a minute.
I think Z9 is completely outmatching them in mechanics in every role now. And that's why I'm saying Hangzhou's going to win it, but take that with a grain of salt, because I myself, this like, I'm not saying it's going to be a close match. Difference, and I just don't know the whole picture right now. So yeah, just kind of in summary, both these teams are kind of a mess internally from what I know, and it's just, I'm not saying it's going to be a close match, but whoever has the better circumstances within the team and surrounding it at the time will win. I think Z9 has the advantage with mechanics, but I think it's completely plausible that Hangzhou actually pulls this off. So yeah, felt like that being my hot take prediction for the week.
I think that's reasonable enough. Both teams, personally, I still place at 5th and 6th, although I'm not sure which one I place where. But I'm definitely personally interested to see which one can pull it out and sort of get on that path to redemption. As for the second game of the week, all four of us are predicting Chengdu to be Easy Clap. Personally, I do think this will be a very close match, and it is worth noting that Melon told me that he believes it's going to be a rather close match. I believe he said 3-2. So
Yeah,
he is
I
showing
agree with that.
he is showing a good amount of respect to his opponents, and I think that's a rather healthy mentality. But I do personally believe that Chengdu will be able to pull it out from what I've seen thus far. I believe Newt was a much stronger opponent than Z9 last week, with all their difficulties, especially technical. And then for Crest versus Newt, we're all rather split. plaZma, unsurprisingly, because he's on the team, as well as myself, have predicted Newt to win, and Melon and Sleepy have predicted Crest to win. So, Sleepy, give me your quick take on why do you think Crest will be able to pull this out?
My thoughts about Crest are that, like, from what I've heard, Crest has an exceptional coaching staff. And so because of that, I expect them to continuously improve throughout the season, probably the most out of any other team. And alongside that, now that they've got a full game to scout Newt, I think the coaching staff will be able to come up with some very neat strategies to be able to beat them in the end. So a lot of faith in the coaching staff over on Crest.
I'd love to refute that.
Go for it.
What is there to scout? That game was what? Not the starting six that they intend to run in the league, and with no preparation, I honestly don't think that there's much for Newt's coaching staff, which I do agree is fantastic. Or sorry, for Crest coaching staff, which is totally fantastic to really go off of. I don't know if there's enough like real substantive information that's going to make that big of a difference. And I think right now Newt has them in mechanics, and if Newt follows through with what I know our current intentions are, I don't think that's a game that Crest will win.
Very interesting. Personally,
yeah, I don't want to leak, so I'm gonna leave that there.
That's fair. Personally, I chose Newt because watching Crest, they definitely gel together as a team very well, and they seem to have some plans, but they seemed to also struggle to execute those plans as well as they supposedly should have against a team as lowly ranked as Hangzhou Bark. So that makes me question if they have enough star power, enough firepower to actually deal with some of these superstars from last season, like Bun, like Baz. Widow's Blue is actually performing quite well. Froze is doing well. So Newt to me just feels like they have a lot more firepower. But I could definitely be proven wrong, and Crest could come out and completely stop Newt.
My opinion is, I think that both teams are like even in mechanical skill, but I think that Crest works better together as a team, because this has been pointed out before, but Newt, they had, 4 scrims?
Yep.
I think that's going to play a big part.
I do think this will be another rather close match. I think that shows by our predictions. Moving on to the Novice Division, however, we're relatively unanimous for the most part, aside from a few people diverging from the popular opinion. But for Double Cap versus Bot Burgers, I don't think it's any surprise that we're all predicting Double Cap to win. For Papega Friends versus Rio Redemption, I'm actually the only one to predict Rio. And while I do think this is going to be a rather close match, I'm not entirely certain how good Papega Friends is quite yet. I know they're very good, and I do place them probably right next to Rio, but I also feel like I didn't get the best read on them. Maybe I need to go back and watch the VOD and analyze them a bit more, but it felt like Papega Friends played better together as a team, whereas Rio just had more firepower. Sort of the same reasoning I put Newt over Crest in some regards. I definitely think Papega Friends has a stronger coaching staff, so I could definitely see them pulling it out. So I think it'll be a 3-2 in Rio's favor, personally. If any of you want to defend Papega Friends past, what I already said.
No, I'm not really sold on the Rio Redemption train. They had a pretty easy first week against Bot Burgers, and Papega Friends having a much harder matchup. I'm just not quite sold on Rio Redemption yet. If they can pull off this match, though, then I think they're definitely a strong contender for this division.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, I think my one big problem is that I don't quite have a good read on plaTchat either, so it's hard for me to say whether Papega Friends had a really tough match or not. I know the 3-0 was rather close from what I've seen, but I do think I need more context in that regard. And as for plaTchat versus One Trick Wonders, plaZma, you have plaTchat winning, whereas the rest of us have One Trick winning.
Yeah, honestly, it's just a feeling. Botanic's gonna pop off, and they're gonna win. I don't have anything substantive. Wow, I cannot say that word tonight. You know what? I don't have anything substantial, but I just think the first match they're kind of gonna move on and just win out from here and kind of reset their minds and just play how I was, and I think a lot of us were expecting them to. You know, with all their former Season 0 connections and all of that.
And I can say, without too many leaks, that I have seen the management for plaTchat moving around and organizing a lot more, especially their coaching staff. So I think they may be setting up for a massive upset. And I believe Tanik even said, don't rate us very highly, because at least he enjoys being the underdog and living up to that expectation.
I think that OTW just needs to build up the momentum, and plaTchat won't be able to stop.
Yeah, I don't know. Silver Star, man, he's absolute unit on the Ash. I don't know if anyone can really stop it, not at this moment at least. See how the preparation goes for plaTchat, but
I remember,
at least for the early stages of the league, I think it's Silver Star's game.
Yeah, I remember even, you can go back to the last week's countdown, and I even pointed out Silver Star and I believe Designs on plaTchat as two players that I recognized from the Pugs really popping off. And I believe Silver Star is like high plat, like just barely below the middle ground cutoff. So he is one of the higher ranked players in the league for Novice Division. And I think he's already proven that he's one of the higher skilled players in Novice Division as well, actually bringing that SR to a physical performance. But anyways, that's all we have. It did run on a little bit longer than I had promised these guys, so I'll end it relatively fast. Do you guys have any closing statements you want to say? Melon, do you have any closing statements? I'll go one by one, make it easier.
I think that Bark will improve a lot. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Sleepy, do you have anything you want to close with?
First, thanks for having me on here. Second, I don't know, I'm just keeping out for Silver Star, man. That's just like I can't say enough good things about that player. He's absolute.
All right, and thank you for your analysis. And plaZma, do you have any closing statements?
Yeah, again, thanks for having me on here. Super chill that we can just kind of do this and talk about the matches. I think that right now a lot of teams are still kind of big unknowns, and it's hard to predict anything still after just 1 week, but I'm excited to see where things go.
All right. And you can thank the community for asking, or possibly just barreling on the hype train for you to be on this show.
Yeah, plaZma for Countdown. Keep it going.
But
Keep it going. We get another, boys. Keep it going.
Might be a little while. We want to give some people opportunities as well. I believe Pixel Storm was also highly requested, so we'll try and get him on. I believe Zane was also trying to get him on as well. So maybe next week. But anyways, thank you all for tuning in to this podcast thing that we have going, the Watchpoint style whatchamajig. If you enjoyed it, feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more like it, tune in every week on Wednesday at noon Eastern time, I believe, is when it's scheduled to upload. And if you have any suggestions, of course, this is still a work in progress. This is the only second episode and the first episode with the more standard format. We'll hopefully try to cut down on time a little bit. And so if you have any suggestions, leave those in the comments below. And until next week, peace nut. We're bringing it back!